Well, good morning, Senators. We have a very busy but important special hearing today on a very serious situation that is taking place in another part of the world, but it really is our issue as well and very important to Canada. I do see that we have quorum and we'll begin. Also, before I welcome our official guest, I see we have the ambassador from Bangladesh in the audience will be with us after this testimony. So, avant de commencer, j'aimerais...
Before we begin, I would like all senators to introduce themselves.
That I think last week that I'm sure everybody had a productive summer. I'd like the senators to introduce themselves before we discuss the human rights situation on the Rohingya, starting with my co-chair.
Salma Taulajan from Ontario.
Nikki Eaton from Ontario.
Senator Ngo from Ontario.
Rainey Landerchuk, Saskatchewan.
Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, Independent Senator for Manitoba.
Ratna Omidvar, Ontario.
Kim Pate, Ontario.
Nancy Hartling, New Brunswick.
Wanda Thomas Bernard, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Senator Munson from Ontario, although my heart is in New Brunswick, of course. But for our first panel this morning, discussing the human rights situation of the Rohingya, we have Anwar Arkani, President, Rohingya Association of Canada, Hamad Ramadan, Outreach Coordinator, Justice for All Burmese Task Force. And of course, as I mentioned, our second panel, we will have the High Commissioner for Bangladesh, and also later on, we'll have human rights groups with us, Alex Neve and others from Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, and Kevin Melseed. But let's start with Mr. Arkani. I think you have an opening statement. If you can keep it to a certain period of time. We have so many questions, but I know that you have so much to tell us. And sincere welcome to our committee.
Honorable Chair, and then all the senators, ladies and gentlemen, I am thankful to Canada for giving me refuge, citizenship, and a voice, as well as the invitation to speak before you today. All three of these valuable assets were denied to me for most of my life as I ran from country to country to country in search of those assets. So thank you. I am from a village named Mostabiswara of Budirang Township, Arakan State of Burma. In 1978, when I was 10 years old, my mother took me and the rest of the family to Bangladesh, escaping the Burmese military attacks. This attack was called Operation King Dragon by the military. The operation began on 6 February 1978. It resulted in forcing about 280,000 Rohingyas to Bangladesh. Thousands of Rohingyas were arrested, tortured, and murdered. My father was also arrested. We were not allowed to see him. He was never charged with any crimes. There was no trial. He was simply murdered in prison. I wished I was old enough to arrange a proper burial for him. 3 years later, I was forced again to flee to Bangladesh after the Burmese government took away citizenship rights of Rohingyas in 1982. Since I was no longer a citizen, I was not admitted to high school. This policy caused a whole generation of Rohingyas to be raised as illiterate. Story of my family's suffering, however, did not begin there. Both of my parents, as children, ran place to place to find safety from Burmese as early as 1940s. When almost half of all the Rohingyas were slaughtered. The mention of 1940s is crucial Burmese discourse since the militaries are still fighting the World War II. Just a few days ago this year, on September 16 to be exact, the Commander-in-Chief of Burmese Army, General Miao Lai, described the ongoing operation against the Rohingya as unfinished business dating back to World War II. Thus, unfinished business has now turned into a nightmare of final solution for Rohingyas. Rohingya villages are being burned, torched as we speak. Although Aung San Suu Kyi has stated that military operation ceased on September 5, the genocidal attacks are still going on. Burma Task Force has documented fires as early as yesterday. On September 25, large fires were visible just across Myanmar border from the refugee camps from inside Bangladesh, where there were reports of arson from Ward 5 of Mongdo town and in Dalpara. On September 24, we had 5 such reports of attacks. I called my niece and nephews who are still alive last night, and they told me that 2 additional villages from the Rathidaung township were torched when I was on the phone with them. In the current attack, which began on August 25th, about 1 million Rohingya have had their lives shattered. 500,000 have fled to Bangladesh and have created for themselves huts with bamboos and plastic sheets and are living in the midst of very inhumane condition, mostly hungry and at a great risk. 120,000 were already in IDP camps in Burma from the 2012 operation. They were fed through the United Nations, but following the ban on UNFP, there was no system of providing sustenance. They were not allowed to leave their camps. The New York Times called this situation the concentration camps of 21st century. In Bangladesh itself, there are about 1 million Rohingyas. 8 agencies have established that there are approximately 800,000 refugees in the surrounding regions. This is a complete devastation of the Rohingya community. All of this is part of a long-standing and long-stated policy of genocide, which was reasserted by the Thein Sein, the former president of Burma, a military general in Myanmar. On July 12, 2012, he asked the then head of UNHCR, Mr. Guterres, who is the head of the UN now, to resettle the Rohingya to take all the Rohingya out of the country, but it was not granted. Consequently, the government began systematically implementing that policy on their own using the military. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and many other organizations have verified accounts of attacks against the Rohingya. In Rwanda, it was said Tutsi were killing themselves since they don't want to live with Hutu. In Burma, they are saying the Rohingyas are burning their own houses. Each time Burmese military has launched their attacks on the Rohingya community, they always accuse the victims' community of initiating the attacks and being responsible for what is happening to them. The same is done this time around when a convenient Arkan Rohingya Salvation Army attack is being used as a cause of this military operation. Nothing can be further from the truth. The evidence of increasing military buildup has been reported as early as August 3rd. Many leaders actually had warned Burma against this operation to attack. The chair of the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Relations Committee, Congressman Ed Royce, Human Rights Organization, and Burma Task Force publicly warned against the military buildup before the alleged attack on August 25th. As a matter of fact, the forthcoming military attacks by Burmese were so known and reported that even Bangladesh announced that it is sending border enforcement to stall the potential influx of refugees. In the last half-century, there have been many armed groups fighting for their rights in Burma, including Christian and Buddhist ethnic groups. The Rohingyas are the only people who have been peacefully asking for restoration of their citizenship. We are not asking for a country or a separate state. We are only asking for citizenship and equal rights. Ladies and gentlemen, The Rohingyas are indigenous people of Arakan state, living in their ancestral land. Telling us that we are foreigners is utterly nonsense. We are not Bengali. We have never been Bengali. Until we were forced to flee, we had no connection to Bangladesh. Although we are thankful to Bangladesh, none of my family members, my parents, my grandparents were born in Bangladesh. As a matter of fact, most Bangladeshis cannot understand my language, and we don't understand them. I request this panel to declare that Burma is committing crimes of genocide against Rohingya people. I request that Canada urgently airlift shipment of tents, medicine, and other supplies to Bangladesh. These things are urgently needed. Rohingyas don't want to live a life of unrecognized refugees anywhere. We are not allowed to become citizens, study, or have a regular job. We would like to live as citizens of Burma. For that reason, I support the Prime Minister of Bangladesh's call to create a safe zone in Burma. However, it must accompany UN peacekeepers with clear mandate to defend Rohingyas against the Burmese army. We call on Canada to initiate this conversation internationally with Germany, France, and taking a lead against the horrific violation of human rights and earning a place on the right side of the history. Just before I conclude, I would like to add one more point, that where I was born and raised, the entire area is cordoned by the army, backed by regular local Buddhists, armed by the government, and watching these people move. They cannot go out of the village and buy anything, find anything to eat. As we speak, the people are dying of hunger and sick. There is nothing, no green leaves of mild vegetables left around the house. They have been eating banana plant and all the mild leaves around the house. That is the condition right now. I would like the panel to consider to do something urgent to save these people who are still alive and they do not have escape route to go anywhere out of Arakan state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your compelling testimony, Sir Ahmad. Do you have a few words to say as well? Thank you.
Dear Honorable Senators, I want to thank you for inviting me to testify before you today regarding the persecution faced by the Rohingya of Burma. Rohingya are indigenous people of Burma living in their ancestral lands. All they ask is to get their citizenship restored, which was taken away from them in 1982 by the military regime. I represent Burma Task Force. It is a coalition of 19 organizations. Since our inception in 2012, Burma Task Force has worked to raise awareness and advocate for an end to the violence against the Rohingya. I want to first commend the Canadian government for being among the foremost governments speaking out against the persecution of the Rohingya. In every meeting I have had with a government official or member of parliament, they have always shown a genuine concern for the Rohingya and interest in taking action to end their persecution. It is an issue that defies partisanship. On September 18th, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wrote to Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi condemning her silence in the face of brutal oppression of Burma's Rohingya people. At a rally organized by Burma Task Force on September 16th, Foreign Minister, the Honorable Chrystia Freeland, told demonstrators that persecution of the Rohingya looks a lot like ethnic cleansing. My goal in this testimony is to present analysis and recommendation based on the work gathered by our team both on the ground with the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh and here at home. Firstly, while we appreciate the well-intended use of the term ethnic cleansing by Canadian officials, it must be noted that it is a euphemism for genocide. The term holds no legal status in international law. It is ironic that the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights calls it a textbook case of ethnic cleansing, but he would be hard-pressed to find any legal textbook with the term as a crime. The first politician to use this was actually Serbia's strongman Slobodan Milosevic to bleach the atrocities of genocide against Bosnians. Dr. Mung Zarni, a Buddhist scholar and prominent dissident activist of Burma's democracy movement, and Dr. Alice Crowley authoritatively argue in the University of Washington Pacific Rim Law Journal that the Rohingya have been subject to a process of slow-burning genocide over the past 35 years. In 2016, over an 8-month period, the Lowenstein International Human Rights Clinic at Yale Law School examined testimonies provided by Fortify Rights. UN documents and Myanmar government documents concluded that there was a strong evidence of genocide. At a conference organized by Burma Task Force in 2015 at the Nobel Peace Institute in Oslo, Norway, 7 Nobel Peace Prize laureates were among the first to characterize the persecution of the Rohingya as a textbook case of genocide. In recent weeks, the Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, A.H. Mahmoud Ali, and the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, have described the violence faced by Rohingya as genocide. The Rome-based Permanent People's Tribunal hearing the case of Rohingya this past Friday issued a verdict finding Myanmar guilty of genocide against the Rohingya. Burmese military launches regular, periodic genocidal campaigns against the Rohingyas, one of which of the campaigns is ongoing right now. Burma Task Force Office receives reporting of burning of Rohingya villages every day, including yesterday. Before and after satellite village images published by Human Rights Watch have shown complete razing of villages in the Rakhine state. Although the Burmese government state that 400 Rohingyas have been killed in the whole operation, we believe that that number is much higher, probably in the tens of thousands, injured, imprisoned, or killed. The UN report, and this is based on one of the basis of this is the UN report saying that 80% of the 430,000 refugees are women and children, and over half of those are children alone. The chair of Burma Task Force, Imam Malik Mujahid, concluded a trip to Bangladesh on September 24th, where he interviewed several survivors of the Tulatoli massacre. Based on his interviews, including former mayor of the village as well as the imam of the village, there's at least, as a conservative number, 750 people, 750 Rohingyas that were killed in just that village alone, as a conservative number. Each time we ask any group of Rohingyas in the refugee camps to raise their hand if they have seen anyone killed, more than 50% have always raised their hand. There are several policies Canada can implement immediately to affect Myanmar's attitude and behavior. First, we call on Canada to call what is happening to the Rohingya what it is: genocide. If this committee needs genocide scholars to testify or Nobel Peace Prize laureates to write to you, we can help arrange for that. I request you to recommend to the Honorable Prime Minister of Canada to second the call of French President and call it what it is, a genocide. Second, Canada has been among the most active nations to promote the international responsibility to protect R2P principle. We urge Canada to implement R2P into its policy-making process in regards to Myanmar's treatment of the Rohingya. One such opportunity presents itself in the call by the Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who has called for the safe zone of Rohingya inside Myanmar, protected by the UN peacekeeping force. We urge Canada to hold conversations with France and Germany to develop a joint proposal for the protection of the Rohingyas. Thirdly, there is an urgent and critical need for humanitarian assistance for the 500,000 Rohingya refugees. Almost 95% of all recent refugees are using just bamboo sticks and plastic sheets, which are extremely unhygienic and have created a pool of disease and very harsh conditions of survival. Most need proper access to food or medicine. Although Bangladesh individuals are rushing to help and the government is trying to organize, the situation is dire. We request that Canada airlifts tents, medicine, and food on an urgent basis. We also urge Canada to increase its assistance. We advise the Canadian government to provide at least a fleet of transport helicopters that can take the urgent supplies from airport to remote areas, since only one small tiny road serves as a critical artery for the area, creating a logistical nightmare to reach the refugee camps, which requires hours of walking. Lastly, there is a huge need to register newly arrived refugees. Bangladesh has only allowed 30,000 plus Rohingyas to be registered as refugees. Canada should urge Bangladesh to register all the Rohingya refugees, and at the very least create a system by which Rohingya can document their losses in life and property for purpose of future investigation and restitution. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, I see a great new opportunity for Canada to emerge as a world leader. While our neighbor to the south has been busy on Twitter wars and Britain is possessed by Brexit, this is a golden opportunity for Canada to take a lead. So it is our chance to show the world Canada means business. Never again means never again. A genocide is genocide. Responsibility to protect means responsibility. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. We'll move along quickly with the questions, beginning with our Deputy Chair, Senator Toulajan, followed by Senator Eaton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Mr. Ramadan, I have a couple of questions for you. We talk about 1982, when the Rohingya basically just stripped of their citizenship. What changed in 1982? Because till then they could vote, they could, hold, like they were considered citizens. I became aware of this situation almost 6 years ago. I've been speaking on this issue for 6 years, twice with a delegation from the Burmese, government. And the first time I just got a blank stare. The last time when I brought it up, I was told no Rohingya, as though the Rohingyas don't even have a right to exist. So what changed in 1982, if you can give me an understanding of that?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your efforts and dedication to this cause. Not just now in the present, but the fact that you've been working on this for a while before it actually came into the public light and became popular. In 1978, the military attempted to expel the Rohingya and had an operation going on where they were planning to eliminate the Rohingya. Unfortunately, it was a premature plan because there was no actual basis for their operation. So they reassessed their plan. That plan failed. They reassessed their plan, and they provided now substance for their action, which is show that the Rohingya are illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. Therefore, they had reason to carry out their operation. So this is why they had installed the 1982 citizenship law to allow a pretense for the operation that they're undergoing in order to expel the Rohingya. I hope that answers your question.
I wanted to ask you, are you happy with the current Liberal government's response? I was at that protest where the foreign minister called it looks like ethnic cleansing. What can we do, and why the reluctance of the media and governments to call it genocide?
From the respect of Canada's statements by the foreign minister, by the prime minister, his letter, they've been using extremely harsh words of condemnation, which is great, and they've been at the forefront of condemning this massacre that's unfolding. However, right now, every hour counts, and we need to quickly move from words to action. The UN yesterday, top officials, including Special Rapporteur Yanghee Lee, has said that she's calling on nations of the United Nations to take action. There's no more time for condemnation. People are dying, as my colleague Anwar Arkani has said. People are literally just waiting to die in their villages inside of Burma. So, we need to move forward. The reason why nations and media has been reluctant to use the word genocide is because it is a loaded term and it has responsibility. And this is why they've used ethnic cleansing, which is really just, as I said, it means the same thing without the responsibility of genocide. So this is why we're urging Canada to use genocide. We know it comes with responsibility, and this is with responsibility, and this is why we're urging them to use that, because of the responsibility it carries.
So at the rally, you more or less we're in agreement. At the protest, I said it's the time for action. Words have had no effect. I just saw a video in where Aung Suu Kyi is actually making a joke about what's happening. I don't know if you've seen the same video. She's like laughing about it. Mr. Arkani, do you still have family in Myanmar?
Yes, I still have a sibling alive. Two of my sisters were slaughtered, and two of my brother-in-law, their husbands, were slaughtered. And I still have nieces and nephews plus cousins. And my sisters also have grandchildren. I do not have a word to console them. They think, honestly, literally, I am the king of the world. I can change things with a snap of my fingers. Say, why you are sitting there idly and doing nothing? Don't you have a heart? How you become heartless because you have a good life in Canada. So how you forgot us so quickly that we have been telling you there is no way for us to survive. There is no escape route. There is nothing to eat. Escape route, we have the place that I was born and raised is far away from Bangladesh border. People who are in Bangladesh now, they're very close to the border, and there were not much barrier to cross. But for us, there is a big flat land, and people are exposed to the attackers. And again, there is a mountain range called Mayu mountain range. There are around 40 mountains in that range. And in the mountain, I have actually video clip here. If anybody wanted to, interested, I can show. The villagers armed with automatic rifles and machetes, along with security forces, they're waiting to kill all of them, slaughter. They don't use bullet. They said it costs money. Why don't you slaughter them like dogs? This is the word they use. Now, there is absolutely no means, no other way for them to escape. Now, it is very difficult for me actually to sleep. Sometimes I go numb and then I just turn off my phone, and that's how I sleep. So there is nothing that I can do. At least sometimes it is good to talk to them while they are still alive. Every now and then they tell me, please tell your government wherever you are. You told us that your country is a democratic country, and then you can talk to people in power. Tell them, either them or pray from God that our government or some other government come and drop a big bomb so that we die peacefully. The women are very scared that they will be raped, brutally gang raped before they got slaughtered. They will be slaughtered. And the men folks are scared of being burned alive. Worse than that is they will throw away children alive into the fire. I would like to say one thing. I'm sorry, it is a very brutal thing, but you need to hear. There is a village called Kinisi, very close to the Buthidaung town, north of Buthidaung town. There, a woman has 3 kids and a husband. 2 of them were shot dead in close range. They're preteen. The husband was slaughtered. He was not shot. The kids were shot. And before they set the fire into the house, they dragged the woman. They were raping her. She has youngest kid. I forgot the son or daughter. The kid was screaming for milk. And the army came and torn apart. Have you ever heard in your life torn apart a child? He was pressing one, put his boots on one leg, the other leg he torn apart and threw them into the fire. So that is the situation in my country. And every hour, every day means we're talking about a lot of lives. It's not just one life. They are doing a lot of this dead body. They cannot hide. They take now these dead bodies to Akyab, the capital city, where they dump into the Bay of Bengal so that no trace can be found in case there is an inquiry a few years later. And they're doing a lot of, they're burning. When they burn, there is nothing left there to find. So that is the situation.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Anwar, very much. We recognize how tough this must be for you. Senator Eaton, Senator No.
When you hear your stories, you really do believe there is evil in its purest form in the world. But educate me a little. Going back to 1978, I think, when your father was taken and murdered, what was the spark? Is it over land? Is it simply hatred between the Buddhists and the Rohingya minority? Why such hatred, do you think?
I was too young to understand those things, and my elders told me that hatred started in 1942 during the World War II, when British and Japanese were fighting there over land. Then some nationalists came up with an idea that we need to get rid of all the Indians. At that time, there were a lot of business people because Burma was considered.
So the Burmese wanted to get rid of the Indians.
Yes.
Okay.
Burma was considered at that time part of Indian subcontinent under British colony.
Right.
And when they were killing or getting rid of these Indians, they said this is a good time to take care of these Muslims here, the Rohingyas. Rohingyas are not only Muslims, actually, there are Hindus as well. So this time you get rid of them, Hindu or the
Were Rohingyas
Muslims.
seen as Indians, or they were just seen, why were they not seen as native Burmese?
There might be some hidden agenda that we do not know. Actually, the thing started in 1962 when Ne Win took the power from the democratically elected government. He was the dictator. And we had a program in our own language, Rohingya language, from the Burmese National Broadcasting Service, radio service. He actually stopped it in 1965. Then he started implementing one thing at a time to eliminate all these Muslims. So that is part of, initially the 1982 Citizenship Act was drafted in 74. It was only implemented in 82. So before that, before implementing it, they tried to get rid of these people. The initial intention was probably not to kill, just to push them out.
Push them out. My last question, Mr. Chair, is Aung San Suu Kyi was given an honorary Canadian citizenship and she won the Nobel Peace Prize laureate. I would love to hear your interpretation of her behavior.
She was the greatest inspiration for the entire Burmese population, including Rohingyas. We did everything, our people did everything in their capacity to help her elected. Everybody was thinking...
so you helped elect her?
No, before election, of course. Yes. And everybody was thinking, okay, she is the champion of human rights. She has collected awards around the globe, all there is to be collected. And people never thought in their wildest dream that she would become like this. And when close to the election, she somehow systematically eliminated Rohingyas from running for election as well as voting rights. It is the first time in Burmese history she successfully did that. Her excuse was, if she doesn't do it, she will not be able to run, she will not be able to have power. Once she doesn't have power, all of her things things will not make sense, so she will not be able to help. And then Rohingya elders sat back and, okay, let her do it. And then when she became the government, the de facto leader of the government, she collaborated with the army one at a time. Initially, people thought, oh, this is a bump on the road, a new democratic system. And then later, it is probably too late now. The rest of the world kind of knew that she is the one shielding the army. People still think, some people, not only in Canada, around the globe, people still think, oh, her hands are tied. If she does anything, she will be either killed or put in the jail. It is not true. The army needs her more than she needs the army. She is the one successfully lifted all the sanctions, decades old sanction on the army generals, as well as some individual army general who are engaged in drug producing, not trafficking, production. They have companies. And she lifted successfully all the sanction by hook or crook. And so they need her as a shield. And there are numerous statements. Burmese government said, yes, she is a good shield for the army to cover the crimes.
Thank you very much for that. We have three senators, and we have about 10 minutes with we could go on and on and on, but we do have a full schedule today with others. So Senator No, Senator Bernard, and Senator Martin, and I will leave it at those three questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We know that on August 24th, the Advisory Commission of Rakhine State, chaired by former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, released the report and fully accepted by the Aung San Suu Kyi, who suggested peaceful way to end the regional conflict. After that, on the 25th, we see the horrible, outrageous violence. Do you think that criticizing Aung San Suu Kyi is the answer of resolving this humanitarian crisis when she has no constitutional power over the military, not the police? You know that the military is the chief commander. They appoint the Minister of Defense. The Commander-in-Chief appoint the Minister of Interior, as well as the Minister of Border Security. So basically, she has no power over the military, and the military answer to no one. The question I'm asking is, would you just say that she is the shield of the military? When she spoke, she said that those guilty of human rights abuses will be dealt with under the full force of the law, which means indirectly incriminated the military. So what do you think Canada should do? What do you think the world should do? Shall we focus on the real culprit, including the Commander-in-Chief, Min Aung Hlaing, and the most effective way for the National Security Council, visa ban on the military or whatever you call it? Is that the best way to do that instead of blaming her and then take no actions?
Thank you for the question. I believe it is both. We cannot just let her loose, saying that her hands are tied. The power is with the military, as I said a minute ago. The military needs her more than she needs military. Now, she is not only shielding the military, she is going beyond the calls of duty to label all these facts as fake news, exaggeration, one-sided, all of those. And she has been creating, so far there has been 5 commission of inquiry. All of those, including the one headed by Kofi Annan, all of those were formed to buy time so that they can kill as many Rohingyas as possible. Even Zote, the government spokesperson, president spokesperson Zote, he said Kofi Annan commission is a shield for the government. Actually it was the 24 September 20, sorry. It was in July. He said Kofi Annan commission is a shield for the government. And now, yes, the military is doing all the crime. She is going around and covering everything. So what we can do, we can put targeted sanction against the military generals, their families, and their crony-related business. If they are crippled, then they will come to a sense that what we're enjoying is not possible if we really do not care about other human life. I think so. We need to address both.
Thank you very much. I would like to get, if you have a very short question.
Very short one. Very short one. Do you think that the action of Aung San Suu Kyi is trying to avoid providing the hardline general sufficient cause to justify a coup d'etat against her democratic elected government?
I do know that part, but I can tell you that what she is doing is knowingly. She knows that is wrong, and she is the one officially. She has done a lot of things that the army government was not able to complete. One is that Rohingya was absolutely blocked from voting and for running. This is the only Rohingya-free parliament in Burmese history. And this is the biggest outflux of refugees. And she is the one did it. She is the only head of state in Burmese history told all the other foreign diplomats not to use the word Rohingya in her country. So she is the one actually doing everything to alienate the Rohingya.
No, what I'm trying to do is, what I'm trying to say is, the way she's doing it is that she's trying to avoid the military to justify a coup d'etat against her elected government.
I don't think military will coup because they know that as soon as there is a coup, they will be segregated from the rest of the world, and they need it. Even if there is a coup, what Aung San Suu Kyi is doing is very, very wrong, and she is lying to the teeth, and the rest of the world has come to realize it, and she is lying. I don't know what she is afraid of.
I agree with you, but the thing is, you say that because Myanmar has been isolated for decades under the military regime. So they survive. So her elected government is only about, 16, 18 months?
Yes.
Do you think that we can give her a chance to proceed to see whether she can do it or not?
I think she has had more than enough time to show what she is capable of. And if we give more time, that is mean we are giving time to completely wipe out the Rohingyas as well as other minorities from Burma.
Senator Tulujan
Thank
has
you.
a supplementary, and then we'll get to Senator Bernard.
It's
and
just
Senator
a statement. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the government officials who have said no mention of Rohingyas, not the military.
Yeah, it's the government, yes.
Thank you.
And she is the head of the foreign affairs as well.
And she has also said that there's no ethnic cleansing going on.
Yes,
Thank
officially.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Bernard, and then the final question, Senator Martin, on
Thank
this
you, Mr.
round.
Chair.
Thank you.
First, let me say thank you to the two of you for your very compelling, very frank testimony, and I honor the pain that I know lies beneath it. My question is around the naming. Mr. Ahmad, you very clearly said naming it genocide and not ethnic cleansing, there's a responsibility, and I'd like you, if you could, to spell out what do you mean by that? When you say there's a responsibility with the naming of this as genocide, what does that mean, and what would the international community need to do then if we name this genocide?
Thank you for asking. Canada is a signatory on the Genocide Convention, and they're also one of the foremost countries in pushing the responsibility to protect. Once you label it a genocide, there is now an obligation as a signatory on this Genocide Convention to protect the communities that are being that are under the genocidal persecution. And this is what we're calling on. It's just basically it clears the road and the path where, a country is now obligated to step in and protect and defend those that have nothing, that have nobody to protect or defend them. It's just as straightforward as that.
Thank you. I wanted to get it on the record.
That note, I'm just looking at the definition of responsibility to protect, which also lists ethnic cleansing in the responsibility of the member states to, pay attention to. So genocide and ethnic cleansing. I mean, they're both just atrocious acts. And so may I continue with my question? Or sorry, is Senator Bernard finished?
I was finished, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. I'll try and be very brief. First of all, thank you for your very compelling testimonies, and I think hearing your voices here at our committee brings it even closer to us, and for us, it's what we are seeing, in the news, and we had an emergency debate in the House yesterday, but the timing of today's committee for us, I think we're hearing from you, not the politicians, on what it is we need to do, what must we do to act as Canadians responsible in this global community. So, Mr. Ramadan, you listed quite a few recommendations or asks of the Canadian government and Canadian politicians. And I'm just thinking, as you said, that there is no time to wait. It's already, after the fact, these atrocities are happening. So would you sort of further specify in terms of like immediate things that we need to do to prioritize this list that you have given us? I mean, we should try and do all of this, but I feel as though there's an urgency to this issue, and if we could, come out of this committee with very strong recommendations of what we need to do and what priority order, would you sort of look at the list that you've given us and say, this is something we could easily do, and this is how? And then my second question is, what is your organization or organizations like yours doing to advance the action that is required on this file? Because sometimes with governments it will take some time, but civil society, nonprofit organizations and other advocacy groups can sort of go in and do things very quickly. So I'd like to hear what specifically you are working on.
Sure. So I think calling it a genocide shouldn't take time. The French president has already done that. So I think if Canada gets on board with that, when the New York Times previously called it a genocide, and then it caught fire, and the world called it a genocide in the past, that's what began the movement and the action, and things escalated incredibly fast at that point. So if Canada comes out and calls it a genocide and starts communicating with the French, government, we believe that there is something there that could happen that would be very quick to happen. In regards to just with you mentioning the ethnic cleansing in the R2P, the problem is the definition by legal terms. So there's no actual clear legal definition for ethnic cleansing. This is why we're being very specific about the use of genocide. Now, in regards to aid, again, I don't think this is a separate thing, and I believe that there are separate institutions that can help deal with that immediately. So just airlifting aid into the area, that's something that could happen immediately, and I don't think should require much deliberation or kind of politics in regards to that. We just need to get aid, food, shelter, medicine to those people. I mean, there's one counselor there that's dealing with 500,000 refugees, and the women there that have been dealing with rape, and they're just waiting around, children, and that have lost parents, and there's nobody helping with these people. So this is an area where Burma Task Force has been helping. We are not an aid organization. We don't deal with aid, but we have been working with counselors, trying to get some of the women that have gone through this rape, teenagers, some counseling and move them through that. We have people that are reporting what is going on the ground there to get us up-to-date information, speaking with people, documenting losses that have happened in specific areas. And, we've been obviously working very hard here in Canada. From our side, there's also Burma Task Force USA that has been working on their side. They have resolutions that are being put forward and that kind of thing. But we believe, and actually the office in the U.S. believes, that Canada has a lot more opportunity here to move forward, considering what's going on there. So, we've met with, last week we were at the Human Rights Subcommittee, which, and we presented, and we're making sure that people understand the situation there, as Senator News was saying, that there needs to be also more focus on the military, and not just on Aung San Suu Kyi, which we believe they're working out of the same book. But regardless of, there needs to be more attention paid to the military. But these are kind of more long-term things, or not so short-term. The immediate is to, I think that there's literally, if we want to summarize it, sorry, I'll be brief, but if we want to summarize it, it's just ask or call it a genocide. Contact the French president, and tomorrow there's a Security Council meeting where I know Canada's not on the Security Council, but they can still attend, and they could speak to the French president to maybe push forward something where we can get UN peacekeepers into the ground right now. Like, this needs to happen immediately. This is the only way to save life. There's nothing left. We've given them the chance and opportunity, and this condemning them continuously last time, what happened in October, has made them more emboldened now, because they saw that we didn't do anything, the world didn't do anything about it. They killed all these people, 90,000 fled, everybody condemned him, and then everybody moved on with their life normally, and nothing came out of it. So if we continue to just use words without holding them accountable, it's going to get worse until it's done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your testimony this morning. Heartbreaking, compelling. It is about human rights, and we do have an obligation as a society and as senators here to listen and to try to make our voice heard with your voices. And we thank you very much for sharing your voices with us today. We're going to suspend just for 1 minute. We're going to have the ambassador, and then of course the human rights groups after. We really sincerely thank you very much. And when I say a minute, I mean a minute, because we're really tight for time. Thank you very much. Senators, we're back in session, and we have the ambassador Bangladesh with us on the second go around. We just witnessed testimony from the Rohingya Association of Canada and the Burmese Task Force, Justice for All, which sets, I guess, the tone for what we've been seeing on television and reading in newspapers and trying to understand it all. But we want to thank the ambassador, for the High Commissioner, for being here. I should know better. His Excellency Mizanur Rahman, High Commissioner, and Naheem Uddin Ahmad, Minister. I understand, High Commissioner, you have an opening statement, and we do have about 45 minutes. And I'm sure there will be plenty of questions. Thank you very much for being here. We are very happy you could make it.
Thank you, sir. Honorary Jim Munson, Senator of the Chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Human Rights, honorable members of the committee, and distinguished guests. I sincerely thank the Senate Standing Committee on Human Rights for holding such a timely hearing on the unprecedented violation of human rights in the Rakhine state of Myanmar and the huge exodus of Rohingyas to Bangladesh. Mr. Chairman, at the outset, I would like to state very briefly who are the Rohingyas. Rohingyas of Arakan are not a race or group per se developed from one tribe or single racial stock. Rohingyas are a mix of people from numerous races and cultures. Initially, peoples of Indian origin, Bengalis, Arabs, Persians, Afghans, and Central Asians came to Arakan mostly as agriculturists, traders, warriors, and preachers, and mingled with the local people and settled in. Linguistically, they used Pashtun, Arabic, Urdu, Portuguese, side by side Bengali. Rohingya language has evolved since then and has taken a completely new dialect away from Bengali language. So their Bengali language affinity does not mean that they shall be called Bengalis only. Mr. Chairman, British history and other records suggest that the Muslims in Rakhine existed long before its annexation by the British in 1824. During the 7th to 8th century, Arab traders traveled to Arakan for business and preached Islam. 15th to 17th century, southeastern part of Bengal was intermittently under the Arakan rule. Rohingyas settled in Arakan or Rakhine after 1825 were well indigenized well before the independence of Burma in 1948. In 1954, the Prime Minister of Myanmar, U Nu, stated that Rohingyas have equal status of nationality with Kachin, Kaya, Karen, Mon, Rakhine, and Shan. During 1948 to 61, Rohingyas were elected as members of parliament. Mr. Chairman, subsequently, the 1982 Citizenship Act of Burma denied citizenship rights of Rohingya and identified them as foreigners and then the cocoon of crisis started budding. There were an estimated 1 million Rohingya living in Myanmar till 2016-17. Myanmar does not recognize Rohingyas as one of the 135 ethnic groups. They have been restricted from freedom of movement, education, and public service. The legal conditions faced by Rohingya in Myanmar have been compared with apartheid. Mr. Chairman, Rohingyas in Myanmar faced military crackdowns in 1978, 1991-92, 2012, 2015, 2016, and latest on 25th August 2017. The counter-offensive of the Myanmar authorities of the 25th August 2017 attacks have failed to respect any norm of international human rights and humanitarian law. This has compelled more than 436,000 as we speak now, and the number is increasing, desperate Rohingya population to flee from Bangladesh to save their lives. This new influx has added to the existing 400,000 Rohingyas who entered Bangladesh in several rounds before August 2017. As of UNHCR, now the number has reached to more than 836,000. While fleeing the onslaught, some have been injured by the landmines planted along the border, an effort by the Myanmar authorities to thwart future returns. Mr. Chairman, Myanmar State Councillor has told in a diplomatic briefing on 19 September 2017 that more than 50% of the Muslim villages are intact. This indirectly vindicates that close to half of the Muslim villages were destroyed. Out of 471 villages, 176 have been completely emptied and at least 34 have been partially abandoned in the township of Mongdo, Butiadang, Rathengdang. As such, it has been derived from the Myanmar government version that half of the Muslim villages have been erased. Mr. Chairman, reports suggest Myanmar law enforcing agencies and their Rakhine accomplices are systematically burning villages one by one, and it is still ongoing. Mr. Chairman, as of Reuters, the most disturbing fact is that the medics see the evidence of rape in the ethnic cleansing campaign. Doctors treating the Rohingya population fled to Bangladesh in the recent weeks have seen dozens of women with injuries consistent with sexual violence. The medics' accounts, backed with medical notes reviewed by Reuters, lent weight to repeated allegations ranging from molestation to gang rape. The medics say they do not attempt to establish definitely what happened to their patients, but they have seen an unmistakable pattern in the stories and physical symptoms of dozens of women. It seems apparently that rape as a weapon has been used to intimidate this ethnic minority with an objective of erasing them from the Rakhine state. Mr. Chairman, Bangladesh appreciates the role of United Nations, European Union, and the international community, including Canada, for their attempts to stop atrocities and bring in stability in Rakhine state of Myanmar. United Nations Security Council has expressed deep concern about the situation in Myanmar's Rakhine state, where over 436,000 Rohingya Muslims have been forced to flee across the border to Bangladesh to escape the increasing violence. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said the humanitarian situation is catastrophic, and reported attacks on civilians by security forces are disturbing and completely unacceptable. United Nations, in its repeated statement, argued that the Myanmar government and its authorities for immediate steps to end the violence in Rakhine and de-escalate the situation, re-establish law and order. UNSG also added that the Rohingya Muslims must be granted nationality or, at least for now, a legal status that allows them to lead a normal life, including freedom of movement and access to labor markets, education and health services. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein, described the horrific incidents as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Refugees are pouring across the border into Bangladesh, bringing with them stories of murder, rape, and devastation. Mr. Chairman, the European Union has recently adopted a resolution citing the Rohingya as a minority group and has called upon the military and security forces in Myanmar to immediately cease the killings, harassment, and rape of the Rohingya people and the burning of their homes. The Myanmar authorities have a duty to protect without discrimination all civilians from abuse and to grant immediate access to humanitarian aid organizations to all conflict areas and displaced people. At para 14 of the EU resolution, it also stated that the EU stands ready to consider targeted punitive sanctions against individuals and entities. In light of the worsening situation of Myanmar, the European Parliament on International Trade has decided to postpone their delegation to Myanmar to an unknown date, as it was clear that the current political and human rights situation in the country, as outlined in the European Parliament's resolution, does not allow for fruitful discussion on potential EU-Myanmar trade matters. Mr. Chairman, such new influx is unbearable burden for Bangladesh, as it has been hosting around 500,000 Rohingya refugees already who had left Myanmar in several rounds in the past owing to military operations. Bangladesh cannot be the repeated victim of violence and instability in Myanmar. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh has recently visited the refugee camps in the bordering district of Cox's Bazar and was deeply troubled to see the hungry and hopeless Rohingya faces. Bangladesh is doing everything possible to provide temporary shelters to these people. While she said that it was difficult to stem one's tears when one sees such atrocities, at the same time she said that Myanmar has to stop the violence against innocent people and will have to take back the Rohingyas who have entered Bangladesh. Mr. Chairman, Bangladesh as a responsible neighbor has remained bilaterally active with Myanmar for more than a decade on the issue of repatriation. Recently, during the visit of the Special Envoy of the State Councillor in January 2017, Bangladesh proposed sustainable repatriation of Myanmar nationals sheltered in Bangladesh. Again, in May 2017, to start discussion on bilateral process for repatriation, a set of proposals were conveyed. We have not received any response from Myanmar on these initiatives. Bangladesh has never shied away from bilateral engagement with Myanmar, rather has been trying its best to engage with Myanmar and has been persistent in its efforts to engage with no tangible outcome. Mr. Chairman, after the 25th August, on several occasions, Myanmar military helicopters have been detected over Bangladesh airspace. Recurrence of this violation of airspace has occurred in spite of Bangladesh lodging strong protest on the first instance. More recently, the Myanmar side has fired upon a Bangladeshi fishing trawler, killing one person and injuring several others. Such actions, Mr. Chairman, are only reckless and irresponsible, but not only reckless and irresponsible, but also indicative of prerogative behavior and diversionary tactics on the Myanmar's part. At the 72nd UNGA session on 21st September 2017, our Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh had called upon UN and the international community to take immediate and effective measures for a permanent solution to this Rohingya crisis. In this regard, she proposed for 5 immediate actions. First, Myanmar must unconditionally stop the violence and the practice of ethnic cleansing in the Rakhine State immediately and forever. Second, Secretary General of the United Nations should immediately send a fact-finding mission to Myanmar. Third, all civilians, irrespective of religion and ethnicity, must be protected in Myanmar. For that, safe zones could be created inside Myanmar under UN supervision. Fourth, ensure sustainable return of all forcibly displaced Rohingyas in Bangladesh to their homes in Myanmar. Fifth, the recommendations of Kofi Annan Commission must be immediately implemented unconditionally in its entirety. Mr. Chairman, we deeply appreciate Canada's role in the wake of Rohingya crisis and see Canada as a champion of human rights. Canada has issued press releases condemning the serious human rights violation in the Rakhine State of Myanmar and has called for immediate action to end the violence and huge exodus to Bangladesh. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had teleconference and wrote to the State Councillor of Myanmar. Also, there has been ministerial-level engagements between Bangladesh and Canada on the Rohingya issue. The Canadian government has provided humanitarian assistance for the vulnerable Rohingya people. Mr. Chairman, the root cause of Rohingya crisis lies in Myanmar. Therefore, the ultimate solution has to be found in Myanmar only. Our Honorable Prime Minister has stated in the UNGA a 5-point proposal, which I just mentioned, for a permanent solution to this Rohingya crisis. So we call upon Canada to pursue Myanmar in line with these proposals in order to unconditionally stop the violence against Rohingyas so that the exodus to Bangladesh is stopped, to implement the recommendation of the Kofi Annan Commission immediately and unconditionally in its entirety, to ensure sustainable return to Myanmar of all displaced Rohingyas, help Bangladesh with urgent humanitarian assistance, to pursue Myanmar bilaterally and in New York, Geneva, and other important fora for sustainable resolution of this crisis. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And High Commissioner, thank you very much. Just before we open up to questions with the Deputy Chair and others, you've praised Canada for what it has done. You talked about a press release and you talked about words. Well, we heard from the previous folks here in front of us who gave us very graphic testimony on what's happening right now. And he talked about we need more than words. We have to move with action. Is it the responsibility of the Canadian government to take action in this regard? They talked about transport helicopters. They've talked about all kinds of things. We were there for Syrian refugees. We were there in words and we were there in action. I know there's diplomatic things going on. But what more could Canada do?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I've already mentioned in my speech that since the root cause is the Rohingya crisis which lies in Myanmar, so the ultimate solution has to be found with Myanmar only. And for that reason, the 5-point proposal that has been given by our Prime Minister, it clearly mentions all the needs that are required, and then things can be worked out, for the finer details. But for the time being, as we have said that the Secretary General of the UN should immediately send a fact-finding mission to Myanmar, and all civilians, irrespective of religion, ethnicity, should be protected and safe zones created. The main thing is that so that these situations have been occurring in a recurring stage. As I have said, that from 1978 it has happened after the independence of Bangladesh, and this time it should be done so that a sustainable repatriation occurs, so that all these people, these 836 or even little more than that, they people go back and find a livelihood there so that they can stay back as respectable citizens of Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't normally ask a question. It's a very compelling subject and can't help myself. Senator Toulajan, Deputy Chair, followed by Senator Eaton and Senator McPhedran.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, High Commissioner, for your compelling and very interesting testimony. You've given us the history of what has been happening. So my question to you is, we're very grateful to the government of Bangladesh because you've been dealing with your own problems and floods and this influx of refugees. I have a couple of questions. Some time ago, there was the news that maybe the government of Bangladesh would restrict the movements of the Rohingya. Could you please clarify that for me? And the other thing is that the Rohingya, when they do come as refugees, are the services provided to all the Rohingya who come, or only to the ones who are recognized as, who are issued cards as being refugees?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you see that as you would understand that we are having a huge influx of refugees in Bangladesh, and the Bangladesh government is trying to have a systematic approach to this whole issue. For this purpose, we're in the process of creating in a area of around 2,000 acres, building around 12 camps in order